We're gonna get our speakers starting to talk here in a few minutes. If anybody just wants to like come on down, fill up the rows. Don't be strangers. Get your food, get your drink. Come on down. Josh, I require you to be in the front. If only because your 7-foot-tall stature will block everybody behind you. All right. I hope everybody got their socks from the great people at Presidio. This is the reason to come out to these things, I think. Outside of the wonderful speakers you'll get to hear from, the socks. The socks. Coveted items. All right. This is such an awesome turnout. Thank you guys. For everybody, both IDEXXers, Presidio, AWS, and random people who came in off the street because they heard that there was food and drinks. My name is Ben Hamilton. I work here at IDEXX. I do DevOps, DevSecOps, Dev***, Ops. This is kind of what we're kind of Team Ben, hashtag Team Ben. So I've been here with IDEXX for about 6 years now. It'll be 6 years in January, and I've been doing DevOps the entire time. I'm very fortunate to have come in here right at a really interesting time for a large enterprise here in Maine, like getting a chance to do something new and interesting, do something inside of Amazon Web Services. In particular, was kind of what drew me here. So I'm really excited that we actually could pull something like this together and get everybody, in a room to hear about, not only what's going on at IDEXX, but what is happening at Amazon as well, especially Amazon Web Services inside of the Portland IT scene. So I do have a few people I want to thank for helping put all this stuff together. I'm going to put people on the spot. Our wonderful AV person, Dan. Without Dan, you would not be able to hear my awesome voice. And then, oh my gosh, we have Vincent, who is no longer even with IDEXX, helped put this together. Vincent Chisot back there in the plaid. He and I kind of sat together in a room one time, and then just kind of this idea kind of bubbled up to the surface. And then we wrangled, people like Sarah Spivak. We're all the way in the back. Sarah, thank you so much for shepherding this. Sarah is one of our HR learning partners. Did I get that? Learning, yeah, she just is an all-around awesome person, helps us out. It's super cool. And then from the Amazon side, we got Kevin McGee. Oh my gosh, this man knows how to send an email that has all the things you could possibly want to know about what we're doing here. Helps us out so much. Helped wrangle the Amazon people to come and talk to us today. So thank you for that. So I'll just kind of get started. Oh, Julie, Julie and Andrew both. When Vincent left me hanging high and dry. Vincent and Andrew, or Julie and Andrew, helped me out, pull this together. So thank you guys. Yep. All right. So, without further ado, I'll get you guys into the first talk here. No slides just yet, but Mark Schwartz, come on up here. Mark is he's an Amazon guy. He's formerly a CIO at the Department of Homeland Security, but don't let that frighten you. He's actually a really awesome guy. I had a chance to meet him in Seattle earlier in the year, and I instantly fell in love with this man, his philosophy on information security, and I want to make sure that everybody knows his name and gets to hear him speak. So here you go, Mark. Come on up.
Oh, it's much better up here. The sun's not in my eyes up here. It's great. Okay. So, yes, I'm Mark Schwartz. I'm with Amazon Web Services. My role is called Enterprise Strategist, and what that means is I'm part of a small team of ex-CIOs and CTOs of large enterprises that have made the journey to the cloud and done digital transformations and all of that kind of thing. And we spend our time speaking with enterprises, trying to help them through any impediments there are to moving to the cloud or transforming. And typically those are not technical impediments, they are cultural change and organizational change and things like that. So before I joined AWS, I was the CIO at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. It's one of 22 components of Homeland Security, one of the biggest ones. And that was my only time in the government. Before that, I was with private sector companies. I was a CIO and a CEO. And one day I was reading a newspaper and reading an article about how screwed up government IT was. And of course that provoked me, and I was like, let me at it. I'm going to fix it. Why not fix all of government IT? So I wound up joining Homeland Security, and after 7 years there, I realized I was done. We had fixed government IT. The government was running like clockwork, as you can see, and so I decided it was time to move on. And I wound up at AWS. So the topic for today is security. And I was in the pleasant position of telling DHS that I was going to move to the cloud. And obviously we had all these component organizations. DHS was sort of the parent organization and rather concerned with security. And I had been there at DHS for a while before that. And over time, I had gotten to know DHS's security posture pretty well as somebody who was sort of hands-on and in the mess a lot. And over that time, we discovered that there were really a lot of problems in our security posture in our data center at DHS. One very timely problem for right now is that our data center was in Mississippi on the Gulf Coast, right where the hurricanes and flooding happen all the time. So that's a little bit of a risk, let's say, if you care about availability of your systems. But we also knew that the data center was run by a contractor who we didn't entirely trust. And we knew that the network was porous, let's say. One of the DHS agencies is FEMA, and whenever there's a disaster, they give access to everybody, right? They all of a sudden need all these volunteers and helpers, and they give access to everybody. We also knew that there were actually spies on the network, and we had to give them access, because if you open an office in Cuba, for example, the Cuban government says, okay, you can open an office here, you just have to hire this person, and this person. And to do their job, they had to get onto the network, so we gave them access. We knew that we weren't patching things often enough. We knew that too many people had privileged access to systems. There were all sorts of things that we were not happy with as our security posture at DHS. So at some point, I decided that we were going to move our agency to the cloud, and we were going to start doing Devops and accelerate very much what we were doing. We were going to shorten our lead times. We actually moved from the usual government cycle of deploying software once every 18 months or so to deploying software 3 times a day for each of our systems. We probably could have gone a lot higher than that, but we were at the point where we could deploy at any moment. And so I said to the DHS CISO, we're moving to the cloud. And every time I talked to anybody at DHS about it, the first question was, is the cloud secure enough? And I thought, this is a really strange question to be asking. You know we're not secure now in our data center, right? Like, we've been talking about it for years, about how the data center is not secure. Why are you asking me if the cloud is secure? Isn't the right question to be asking, where is our security posture better, in the cloud or in the data center? And I think the fact that the first question that tends to come up is the cloud secure enough, is a sign of it's just sort of a status quo bias. It's like we're fine where we are. There's no urgency, we're good. Anything new is suspicious because it might be risky. And really, the truth is that the risks are everywhere. And what it's all about is trying to build a better and better and better security posture. For the record, the cloud is secure. AWS is built from the ground up to be secure. We have tremendous resources to apply to it, a number of pretty smart people. We have been doing it for 12 years and making it better and better. And I think the most important thing really is that as we meet the security requirements of more and more different kinds of organizations, we're improving the core infrastructure and everybody benefits from those improvements. So the platform itself is pretty well secured, and moving our DHS applications into the cloud, we knew that we could rely on the infrastructure. Now, that of course is only a small part of the story, because so the cloud is secure, the infrastructure is secure, but the applications that you're running on the cloud are still things you need to secure. In fact, everything you do in the cloud still needs to be secured. We have this shared responsibility model where AWS makes sure of the security of the cloud, and the customer has to make sure of their security in the cloud. So you still have to figure out how you're going to maintain a good security posture. AWS gives you lots of tools that you can use to do so. And in fact, those tools and the underlying security of the platform are the reason why, say, Capital One built their flagship banking application on AWS, why Stripe built a payment system on AWS, why the CIA and the other intelligence agencies are building their applications on AWS, and ultimately why DHS is too, after I convinced people. But I think when you think about the security of applications running in the cloud, the thing that I want to point out before we start getting into technical things about security is that most of security is not technical. Of course, when you start to think about the advanced persistent threats and all the really smart actors out there, there's a lot you can do in security engineering to fight the really sophisticated sorts of attacks, right? But most exploits, most security problems have to do with stupid stuff. It's the stolen credentials, it's the social engineering. In application development, it's simple things like SQL injections that everybody knows how to avoid, right? Those are the things really that the hackers exploit. And by far, that's the greatest part of what's exploited. We actually, in my agency, we had an auditor come in and do some social engineering so we could see how the employees would react. So the auditor called people and said, "Hello, I'm from the help desk, and I need your password so we can fix your account," or something like that. And about 60% of the employees gave their password up. And this was after we had spent years training them not to do that. Really, even worse than that, we had the auditors come in the evening and walk around the office. And guess what they found when they walked around the office? Little sticky notes on people's monitors with their passwords written on them. Or out on their desks, there were documents with PII. And we had some really sensitive information about applicants, who maybe were applying from countries where the government wouldn't be happy to find out they wanted to immigrate, that kind of thing. So it was actually really dangerous stuff. And they were able to find so many examples of these things. It was just a normal thing to do, to write down your password or leave stuff out. So really, that is where the risk is. I wouldn't say that's all of the risk, but that's like 98% of your risk. Are people employees of the company? Are they walking into the office using badges or whatever and letting somebody they don't know follow them through the door? Yes, they are. And that person who follows them through the door might see some sticky notes with passwords on them. there are so many ways that you can compromise. The credentials are really the main thing. If your credentials are compromised, there's going to be a break-in, and the bad guys are going to get stuff. In the government, we had a big incident. I can tell you right now, a lot of our good, sensitive personal data is backed up very securely. It's in China, and if we ever lose any of our data, we can probably go to China and ask them for a copy of it, because the government-sponsored hacker has hacked into the OPM database, which is where all the personnel records of the federal government are, and they did that. Oh, and this is not any old personal information. This is my security clearance information, right? Which is a documentation of everything I did bad in my entire life, So that's backed up in China. The way they did that was by stealing credentials. I said nothing really sophisticated. They were able to find out somebody's login and then get into the system and then escalate from there and escalate privileges and so on. So I've come around to thinking about security primarily as a cultural issue. It's a question of company culture and organizational culture, because in the past, we've thought of security as something that just a group in the IT organization does. We got our security geeks, and they do their thing, and they add security to whatever applications we build or software we've deployed. And that misses the point, right? It's not going to catch all these other things that are the big security threats. And even in some cases, if let's say I heard people talking about Scrum before. If you're using a Scrum process, let's say you've got a backlog and you got a product owner who's prioritizing things from the backlog, and you want to invest in security, well, there's somebody from the business side who thinks the features that you're building are much more important than the security feature. How are you going to get that security feature in there? Because it's just not so important to the product owner. If you're not using an agile practice, the same thing comes up, right? You've got sort of a business group that's fighting, putting effort into security. And to me, that's really misguided at this point, because we know that everything is under attack constantly. We know that if you let up on security, bad things are going to happen. And it is not just the concern of a group in IT. If you're a marketing person, for example, you should be really concerned that you are promoting products that might compromise personal information of the customers. If you're in sales, how are you going to sell if your company yields personal information to hackers? If you're in operations and a bad guy gets in and defaces your website or makes your system stop working, you can't operate, right? This is, if you care about your customers, you have an obligation to protect them. And it doesn't matter if you're in IT or you're in marketing or you're in operations or product development or anywhere else. Everybody in the organization should consider security to be their job and something that they need to invest in and something that they need to support at all times. It's a cultural question, like a lot of other things when you're doing a transformation. So the challenge I see is, how do you build a culture in the organization where security is top of mind for everybody, where they think everything we do has to, by design, be rugged, has to be survivable. It has to be built in a rugged way. We have to act in a rugged way in everything that we do, because we know there are bad guys out there, and it's our responsibility to keep our customers' data safe and to keep the company's systems running and so on. So I don't have all the answers on this one, unfortunately, or maybe I have them, but I only have 15 minutes, and my time is just about up. But I think the first concern of any security strategy should be, how do you get everybody to believe that they should care about it, Because, great, put firewalls in, put whatever else you want in. If people are leaving little sticky notes on their monitors, your system's going to get compromised. So before we get into the technical stuff today, I just wanted to send that message kind of loud and clear, and I hope that I have. So enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Can you see now why I love this man? I've only met him like twice, but speaks to my heart when it comes to just all things security. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you again. That's awesome. So I'd like to think that everything that Mark says, IDEXX can do, and that we can do because of AWS and people like Presidio out back too. You guys are awesome to work with here. I like to think that, but as with anybody or any organization, I think we still have ways to go. Along those lines, I had a chance to meet with a gentleman probably 8 or 9 months ago at this point, Mr. Ben Allen. Who was this really smart person who worked at a competitor. I didn't really hold that against him, but he did DevOps and had this natural ability, natural acumen about security, and had a chance to sit down, chat with him, and just like I instantly fell in love with Mark the first time I heard him talk, I instantly fell in love with this man too, because they get it. They're on the same page when it comes to just how to think, or at least in my humble opinion, how to think about information security and philosophy and those sort of things. So next up, Mr. Ben Allen. He's one of our IDEXXers. I'm quite proud to say.
Thank you, Ben. It's all lies. So I'd first like to just say thank you for coming out today. I'm really happy AWS and Presidio came and got us all together. I think these kinds of opportunities to network and learn from each other are so important, and it's great to be able to do that here in Maine, where the groups are usually pretty small. So I am told I'm the only one that has slides today. I'm going to talk about Guard Duty, which is a really cool service that Amazon launched last year. And we actually did a recent project which scaled this up across all of our accounts, and I think it's kind of interesting, and I think there's some mistakes that I made that you can learn from. So anyways, so let's get into it. So who the heck am I? My name is Ben Allen, or Benjamin Allen, whichever you like. Yeah, or Isaac Allen. Yeah, I go by many different names. I'm a DevOps practitioner. I specialize in security. I'm really passionate about security. I love it. I think it's so interesting. I think there's a lot of hard problems to solve. I have a background in fintech, veterinary and healthcare. So that kind of journey started off with me going to hospitals, and I worked at hospitals for a while. I got tired of the human aspect. Started going to pets and started working with them. I got tired of that. Went to a bank, and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. I went back to pets. So I'm here at IDEXX. I'm really into open source projects. I was just gushing about an open source project just recently, Grafana, to someone. If you guys are obsessed about some project, come talk to me afterwards. I want to hear why you are. I'm a really lazy person, too. Well, I'm hardworking at being really lazy. So I like to automate stuff. That's what I tell people. And why I'm up here. I worked on a project recently regarding the Guard Duty product. We rolled that service out to 60 different accounts over 14 different regions. So let's talk about that. So who here has heard of Guard Duty? Just raise your hands. Oh, okay, good. Who here uses Guard Duty? Oh, wow, a lot less people. Okay, cool. So Amazon Guard Duty is a continuous security monitoring service. It's really cool. What it does is it analyzes and processes VPC flow logs, AWS CloudTrail event logs, and DNS logs so you don't have to. Amazon's really good at getting all this information together for you, but it was always sort of like, what do you do with it? How do you process it? How do you make it actionable? So Amazon has really stepped up and made this stuff much better for us in the security world. It uses data feeds from third-party experts. I think this is one of the best parts of this because GuardDuty works off of data from vendors like CrowdStrike, for example. CrowdStrike is one of the best actors in the security field right now at profiling security threats. So Amazon pulls from that data and that knowledge to really give this some value. It does magical machine learning. So I don't know if you guys, you've probably heard a lot about machine learning lately. I think it would be kind of fun to go to a conference, have a drinking game. You know, you drink every time you hear machine learning, right? But anyways, this does machine learning too. It learns to identify unexpected patterns of unauthorized use or malicious activity, and it works really well. I say that from the stance of I know if someone goes to a coffee shop that they haven't gone to before, GuardDuty will tell me, hey, this person is logging in from somewhere they don't know. So it does that really well, and it can detect so many cool things. So it can detect if like a Kali Linux server is calling API calls. It can tell you if your EC2 instances are running malware, unauthorized IAM calls. There's just really a lot of cool stuff that it can do. If you have a SIM, I'm very happy for you. You can forward events to a SIM if you have one. IDEXX, we don't have one yet, so that's why this was such a great product for us to build on and do something with this. And finally, it has really good documentation, super documentation. If you're a basic user and you just need to know how it works, it's really good. User guides all the way up to the APIs. Amazon's famously good for this, right? So why GuardDuty? So I didn't necessarily pick GuardDuty. It was here in one account or two accounts when I started. And I was kind of waffling if I wanted to put this slide on here because I think it's kind of interesting that GuardDuty is, it kind of encompasses what I feel is the DevSecOps principles. And if you don't know what DevSecOps is, well, we could talk about it, but it's a really interesting cultural thing about incorporating security into everybody's job, more or less. And I think GuardDuty really is good at kind of meeting those principles and becoming a really good tool for folks who want to incorporate these kinds of workflows into their stuff. So I'll tell you why. I think so. Data security and science over fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Oh, and by the way, I lifted this off of the DevSecOps manifesto. Definitely read that if you haven't. But anyways, what this can do is it can give you a lot more data, so you don't have to worry if your cloud is secure or not, do we know? There's consumable security services with APIs instead of paperwork and mandatory access controls. So that's fun. Blue team, red team exploit testing. So this is really cool. So if you guys have a blue team, they want to see what's going on. And if you have a red team actively, say, attacking, GuardDuty can actually feed information to your blue team, and you can kind of get an idea what's being targeted, what's being done. It's really cool for that. 24/7 proactive security monitoring over reacting after being informed. This is really great. It gives you the data right when you need it. Okay, and then shared threat intelligence over keeping info to ourselves. So this is a big one. One of the things I really don't like about security in its current form today is that the security is not democratized. It's not, the information isn't out to people where they can make changes in their workflow and become better security folks, even if they aren't security folks. GuardDuty has let us take all of the threat intelligence and put it out there to anyone who wants to see it. We're not hiding it, right? We're showing everybody what it is. So Ben, are you picking tools based on trendy buzzwords like DevSecOps? No. I promise. So security in today's current form is broken, and I could talk about this for a whole hour. I think security just doesn't work because nobody is incentivized to care about security except for security professionals. And I think DevSecOps is the answer to this, right? It gets people involved. It gets people caring and invested in doing stuff with it. And it's an extension of DevOps. So if you're familiar with DevOps, it's a way of working together. It's a culture, right? I have this quote. I really, really like this book, Effective DevOps. It's by the folks that run Etsy, the DevOps folks, rather. I think this really kind of really illustrates well what this is. So DevOps, right, is a way of thinking. It's a way of working. It's a framework for sharing stories, developing empathy, and enabling people to practice their crafts in effective and lasting ways, right? People don't want to put out unsecure software. They don't want to do that. They want to do the right thing. So DevSecOps is really about enabling and empowering people to do the right thing, make good stuff. So, get started today. Guard duty is really simple to set up. There's a blue button, you press it. I can do that. You can do that too. It's really, really simple. And, I have sort of this wave of regret. I didn't actually take a screenshot of the console, so I don't have that for you, so I'm really sorry. But if you've ever seen an Excel spreadsheet, it kind of looks like that. There's a bunch of lines, and each line has a data point, and you can learn about what's happening inside your network. So let me tell you about IDEXX, what we've been doing with it, and how it's sort of interesting. As mentioned, we've enabled it on 60 accounts, every region where the service is available, and we ship all that data to a master account. So we have all these base accounts, and all the guard duty events flow into one specialized account that just does guard duty. So it's very segmented off from anything else. And then what we've done is we've leveraged a Lambda to create a sort of events processor. And what that does is it's going to process and filter some alerts. So sometimes I don't really necessarily need to know that China is scanning our servers. Yeah, we know that, right? I don't care. So, we filter out that kind of stuff, and we get the real actionable, the meat, the really good alerts that, we want to know about. And it brings, one of the things that we do in this, which is kind of fun, so guard duty is really raw data. So it can kind of give you some really good information about your Amazon account number. Now, if you know your Amazon account number, that's great for you. I can't memorize 60 Amazon account numbers. So if an alert comes through and it says, account 02613456778, right, has something, it's not really actionable to me, right? So what we've done is we actually have a whole database, a little DynamoDB that sits in that account, and what our Lambda does is it queries the raw information and kind of tags some additional user-friendly data on there. So it makes it really friendly and approachable. And our alerts are processed through Slack, so that's a very popular platform now. So I'm just going to show you what this looks like, our Slack alert. This is AWS Guard Duty. As you can see, it says APIs invoked by blank, because I redacted this, roll from an unusual network. Hello, person. A Guard Duty event has been triggered. We have the time, severity, the account, friendly name, right? Account number, and the region. You can actually click on that blue text. It'll take you right to the console where you can investigate. And this has been really cool for us. But the project has had some drawbacks and things that didn't go over well. So if I had a time machine, I could go do this again. I would do a few things, and I definitely advise you to take my advice on this one. So if you have 60 different accounts, you really want to make sure you know who's responsible for those accounts, right? Some of our accounts are owned by 4 or 5 different people, and they're on different teams with different budgets. So if something bad happens, what do you do? Who do you contact? And then is that contact a technical contact that can do something, or is that just sort of some administrative person? I've actually had accounts assigned to secretaries or administrative assistants. Sorry, that's the right term. I'm sorry. I'm destroying everything. So anyways, yeah, so you really want to define that well. Who's going to do something? Because if nobody is, nobody will do something, right? There needs to be accountability there. I define actionable items. So let's go back to this slide. APIs invoked Role from unusual network. Okay, what? If you're not a security person, this doesn't really make a lot of sense to you, maybe, you know? So what I wish we had done is I wish we had like written a run book that kind of like goes through each thing and tells you how to address it, you know, per IDEXX standards. Again, we just want to empower the people that are getting these alerts to know what to do, because they want to do that good job. And by not providing the information, we didn't do that. So I would change that. I would let people know in advance that I'd be sending them so much email. Guard duty is, so if you're on AWS Labs, there's a really great script that will let you enable 60 different accounts in guard duty, and it's great, right? It makes it much easier than pressing that blue button. But what happens is every time that you enable it, you send an email to the account owner and the DevOps team, and 60 times 14 is like 860 emails that I sent to the team in one day. I was really popular that day. Yeah, so everybody learned my name really quick. Despite the drawbacks, right? Guard duty has been so helpful. It's so cool. We've seen malicious activity and that we've contained. We don't have a SOC. SOC is Security Operations Center. So, you know, what we've done is we've funneled this information into willing, helpful people who want to do good, and they have taken care of security concerns. We've better understood how our coworkers work with AWS. I know it's sort of a weird benefit, but, you know, I now know what someone is doing, like, with their account. Like, maybe they're, like, heavy EMR users. That's kind of helpful to know, actually. And in a recent pen test, we actually saw activity done by the pen tester. It came through to our alerts, and it was so cool. And it was really, really, I mean, I was so happy with how things turned out. The alert went in, and about 3 or 4 minutes later, there were a couple of DevOps people working on it to disable that access because the Kali Linux server was doing something inside of our network. It was so cool. And again, no security operations center, just regular folks wanting to do a good job. So this is the part where I ask if there's any questions, and I will take questions on anything, not just this. So any questions? Yes, young lady. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so her question was, if we've seen stuff from everyday users, what is that? And really, it's just sort of like, so like if you have a DevOps person and they are doing, you know, administrative functions from a place they don't normally do, like some of our folks travel. They'll go out to Wisconsin or Las Vegas or something, and you know, if they've never done that before, and this was turned on, you know, only just a few months ago for us, it's going to not be part of the baseline, and we're going to get an alert for that. So it's the machine learning aspect, right? It has to learn what's normal, and it gets better over time. So that's what we've been seeing, just sort of like little blips like that. So yes.
What is the cost for this, and how many servers do you need to have on a cloud to utilize this?
Yeah, good question. You don't need any servers. Yeah, it's a managed service. It's awesome. I don't know how much it costs. I'm sure someone from Amazon would be more than happy to tell you that. Oh, Lex, he says it varies. Yep. Yeah. So not a lot of money for a lot of good stuff, basically. And, you know, gosh, like, it's just really good at doing that. You can actually turn it on for 30 days for free if you want to just check it out first. So I would definitely recommend doing that. So any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, so his question was, how do you get through the noise? Like, how does this become valuable and actionable? And I'll kind of go back to the machine learning part, right? It's not super great initially, but once you start getting that baseline built, you're going to kind of filter out some of that stuff. And quite honestly, if someone is using administrative stuff from some foreign country, I definitely want to know about that, even if they actually are there. Just knowing about this kind of stuff can better help us understand to say, oh, that's normal behavior or that's not normal behavior. It's, again, it's really up to the algorithm and how the events are processed and the baseline is created. So, yeah. Is that right, Lex?
Our solutions architect people, we love them to death.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm not telling you misinformation. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too. Guard duty has just gotten way better for us as we continue using it. So it just keeps getting better, So. Okay, so one last thing, guys. I just want to plug something. I know it's really selfish, but one of the things I really don't like about Portland is the security groups right now. They're just so boring. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They're kind of stuffy. If you're a new person to security, they're not super welcoming. You don't get to do hands-on stuff. Maybe you'll talk about policy and security operations centers and stuff like that. What I wanted to do is actually I want to create a group which is focused on doing fun security activities, right? So this is actually a DEF CON group. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but DEF CON is one of the oldest hacking conferences out there. It's kind of like a counterculture thing, but I promise I don't have a mohawk today, and I'm not going to do anything weird. Our first meeting is going to be in November. It's in the Old Port. I've got the address, the time, all the information that you need on dc207.io. We're going to have monthly meetings, second Thursday of every month. There's going to be happy hour during and afterwards. So there's beer, and there's going to be food. Our first Capture the Flag activity is actually located right on the website. So if you guys have never done a Capture the Flag event, basically we give you something, and we ask that you to basically get in there and hack into it. We want you to test out things, try to break stuff. We want you to break stuff. So come break stuff with us. I would really like that. Yep, and that's all I got. Yeah, so I'd like to thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Ben Allen, everybody. Like I said, I had a chance to meet Ben, 8-9 months ago. Kind of came through our recruiting pipeline, if you will. Instantly knew that I needed to work with this man, and I tried my hardest to get him to come to IDEXX, and he thankfully, made his way here, because he really does believe the same things I believe about security, which is. A rare commodity. So I hope you guys get a chance to, go participate in his extracurricular activities, and get to know him better. He's really awesome. Yeah. Also, I want to add one more anecdote to his guard duty presentation about the unusual networks part. We have an employee who has worked at IDEXX for like 25 years now in Wisconsin. And the majority of those years he spent, working at the office that we have in Wisconsin. But then about 3 or 4 years ago, he decided, well, none of my team actually works in the office anymore. They all work from home. I'm also going to go work from home. And so now anytime you pop him up on a WebEx or a Zoom, it's him in his basement. He's got his his beer paraphernalia strung up behind him. It's really, really entertaining. So Guard Duty created this profile based around his activity at his home, on his home network. And then when he did actually go into the Wisconsin office, it sent us an alert that said he was coming in from an unusual network. And I said, Terry, yeah, that's because, you are at an unusual network for Guard Duty's purposes. It doesn't actually believe or want to believe that you're, where you're normally coming from, which is, our office. Funny little anecdote. So I'll just close that up. So our next speaker is of Amazon. Actually, I got some notes. I took notes because I have a horrible memory. Pete, I'm not going to even try your last name, buddy. I'm not even going to try it. I'm sorry. I wrote it down phonetically, and I don't even trust that. He's an enterprise solutions architect with a focus on security at Amazon. Please welcome Pete.
All right, thanks so much for joining, everyone. Mark's definitely gone through and gone through some of the areas of shared security and those sorts of things, but I'm just going to start off with just how many of you are familiar with the AWS shared security model in itself and that sort of thing? Okay, great. So really critical to understand AWS security is what areas that we take care of versus what areas that you are responsible for, right? So we take care of the security of the cloud versus your security in the cloud. So what that means is, at the bare minimum, everything from the hypervisor downward is AWS responsibility, and there are over 1,800 controls that you don't have to worry about, right? So undifferentiated heavy lifting that you would normally have to take care of if you're managing a data center, everything from even just access to that data center to the controls inside of that data center, all the way up through patching hypervisors and things like that. And then there are high-level services as well. So if you talk about using S3 for storage, you're not managing servers, you're not managing any of the operating system there, but you are managing the controls around who has access to those S3 buckets or what type of encryption, how that encryption is enabled. So critical to understand that. And then what I can talk about here is let's do a service overview, but there's many aspects to that. But basically, how you would enable those controls in the cloud, right? So if you look at those security controls, there's a number of services that we offer that are, as you see with GuardDuty, incredibly easy to turn on. One click, push a button, and it's turned on, and it starts bringing you value. Incredibly low cost as well, right? Because we want to make things like encryption ubiquitous, super easy to turn on. Things like alerting and incident response, all those aspects. So I'll go through, some of our aspects of security, and I can't go through all the services, but just to give you some, tips and tricks along the way, right? So in terms of identity access management, is anybody using the root account to manage your accounts in the room?
I'm looking at the IDEXX.
All right, good. So that's, obviously step one, just take the root account and, put on MFA and lock it away, right? But I was meeting with a customer earlier today, and a very large customer was still managing, in terms of identity access management, all the accounts inside of their AWS accounts, right? They're actually creating individual IAM users in their accounts, and there was a huge struggle around that and the process around that. So tip number one, identity access management, if you have Active Directory, you have federation services, or even if you don't have federation services, turn on that federation, because what that will do is enable you to not have to worry about people joining and leaving accounts, those accounts, credentials being rotated. That will be handled with your internal system with Active Directory. So step one, if you can do that, just greatly minimize the number of accounts you're creating inside of IAM, right? Use Active Directory or whatever directory service you use. If you don't have a federation service, we do have one, AWS SSO, that can enable that for you. Also, if any programmatic access, right? So managing these secret keys and access keys that you may be doing inside of your applications, definitely reduce the amount of those that you actually use, right? So we give you ability to turn away, basically assign a role to a server or EC2 instance, or a role to a Lambda function that can then perform those actions rather than having to use a secret key and an access key. In the cases that if you do need a secret key or an access key or some other credential, even it could be, your application is using a database username and password, right? Just historically, you have to store that someplace. That may end up hard-coded in your code. We have a service for that as well, right? So using Secret Manager or EC2, or now it's called System Manager Parameter Store, one of those two services, can store those passwords, those credentials for you. And when your application needs to access those, you can dynamically pull that and use that, and we keep it encrypted using our backend KMS, key management encryption, right? So those are just native capabilities. They're easy to turn on, easy to use in the identity access management space. Detective controls, I assume you've got CloudTrail turned on, right? That's step one. But look at not just keeping that CloudTrail in the account that it's basically centered in, but also pushing that CloudTrail, those logs, into a centralized logging account, because every single action, every single API call that's made inside AWS is going to end up in CloudTrail, whether it's a decryption operation or a change to spin up a database, create an EC2 instance. All of those things are going to end up in CloudTrail. So it's that, along with AWS config, key areas for traceability for who's done what when. So having that kind of kept in a separate account where you're aggregating all of those logs and where it's immutable, really important, because you have that source of truth that you can then use. You can have it ingested from your SIM tool if you have one. If you don't have one, you can create other ways to give you visibility using some native services as well. So I talked a little bit about AWS config. That's also a way to if you had an auditor say, hey, when was this firewall changed in this instance? When did that happen? And now it's open. Why is it open? You can go back and say, okay, that happened on August 25th, and here's the changes that were made. That's one aspect to config as more of a detective type control. But then there's also config rules, which you can enable for not just compliance, but also reacting to those things as they happen. So being able to build a config rule, there are many native ones as well, but for, say, making sure that every instance that's spun up is using encryption, those drives are encrypted. Very easy to just check a box, turn that on. Everything from that to like enabling just network access if somebody turns on, quad zeros on a security group, right? So being able to quickly react to that, not just, from the audit perspective, but also proactively. Infrastructure security areas, so things like systems manager. If you want, we really want customers to move away from it. Our CISO, Steve Schmidt says, get the people away from the data, right? So in terms of like, basically the access, if people don't need to access it, they don't have to access it. So basically create that automation in place for them not to have to go into the data and touch the data. If they're an administrator, system manager can automate those actions across your fleet. So if you need to go in and run a script across all of your servers, or you need to do patching, or you need to automate the build of those servers, you can use systems manager to do that without anybody having to log into a server. And we did actually also announced, I think it was just yesterday, the day before, ability to shell into a server if you needed to do that, under certain circumstances, right? So you could basically set a baseline to say, if there's actions happening on the server, have it happen through AWS Systems Manager, automate that process if possible as well, and then for those break glass type situations, allow administrators to log in and be able to perform certain actions that they need to perform. And that was a big pain point for our customers. I talk to customers every day, how do I manage all these SSH keys? How do I manage access into all these servers? So that's another area that I would say definitely look at. AWS Shield, if you do have externally facing sites. So AWS Shield is a zero-cost service that gives you native DDoS protection in your AWS environment, right? So if you compare all these things to what you would get on your data center, inside of your own data center or with another cloud provider, you'd have to actually build these capabilities. We want those things to be inherent in the environment, right? So you don't have to worry about necessarily handling layer 3 and 4 DDoS attacks, right? We're going to do that natively. We do have Shield Advanced if you wanted to have a dedicated DDoS team that can then respond and help you with that incident response piece of it as almost part of your NOC, but that's an additional service, but the native capabilities for the DDoS protection is there. Also, if you want layer 7 capabilities, that we have AWS WAF, so Web Application Firewall, for protecting against SQL injections and those sort of things. So that's pretty much. So data protection, I should talk about also. Native encryption, right? So our key management system, key management service, I would highly recommend taking a look at that if you're not already using it, because it natively integrates with AWS services, right? So if you think about, imagine every single object you upload to S3, having to manage a key related to that, and then having to manage the source key that's encrypting that key, it would be a nightmare, right? So doing that on-prem would be, quite an undertaking. We've built that into the system, where you basically turn on KMS. You can create your own customer CMKs, customer master keys, and then you can apply those to a variety of services whether it be Redshift, the data warehouse, or encrypting your EBS volumes, or S3. Just turn it on in your S3 buckets. Automatically, everything is going to get encrypted as it's uploaded, and you don't have to worry about managing those keys, right? So just inherent encryption capabilities. We do also have a cloud HSM. So if you want to have your own hardware security module, you can use our own key management service, which is audited and managed for you. Or cloud HSM would actually give you even a little bit lower level of management around the keys. And you could, either one of those services, you can also bring your own keys as well. Certificate Manager is a service that's often overlooked, but for many customers, managing certificates on things like web servers is an issue, and that you might forget that it expires, or just generating the CSRs and going through that whole process. Certificate Manager there's zero cost for the certificates that you generate. It automatically rotates for you. So it takes a huge amount of burden off just managing certificates. Incident response is the last kind of piece I wanted to touch on. So I mentioned config rules and being able to use those to react to configurations that don't meet your compliance needs. Incident response, the other piece would be using things like guard duty, which it's fantastic the way that IDEXX got that set up. The next step could be to take the findings from guard duty and instead of notifying off the first bat, you could actually use those events that are coming out of basically those trigger what's called CloudWatch events, to then take an automated action, right? So incident response can be part of that automation where you're taking those things that are happening, and then you decide what you want to do. If for instance, a server in your environment is performing an attack on another server outside your environment, do you want to shut that down? Do you want to isolate it, take an EBS snapshot? All those things can be automated as part of that incident response process. So the last thing I would say is that for incident response, we have a 4-hour workshop that we can do with you guys. It's free of charge, and it's a lot of fun to do, where you actually go through the process of responding to an incident. We set it up via CloudFormation, spin up that environment as if your environment is getting attacked, and then using our tools, we show you how to build out the capabilities to respond to those in an automated way. And so that's something I would just wanted to mention. Any questions on this stuff? Yeah. Parameter store. Yeah, so Secrets Manager is a little bit different in that they both are backed by KMS, but it actually manages the whole rotation process for you. So that's one of the key pieces of that. So managing credentials and that whole rotation process across your environment is automated. Technically, you could do something like that. You could build your own lambdas and have parameter store hold those keys, but it does automate that process for you. That's usually the question. Yeah, I mean, when new services come out, there can be a little bit of a delay for the CloudFormation piece, but yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Pete. Still not going to try your last name. I'm horrible at that stuff. Yeah, so I hope so far you guys are getting a really good sense for what Amazon has to offer in terms of just their security as a service platform, whether that's bolstering or supporting just all the things that happen in Amazon, because we get really excited whenever there is a new announcement or a new feature that supplements one of the existing security things that Amazon's doing or offering to us as their customers. We also get really excited when there's new announcements, which tend to get snuck in underneath the radar, even if you do have an NDA and with them, and do sometimes get preview access. They keep the security stuff pretty close to the chest, so we're genuinely surprised when things like guard duty come about. So we, and just hearing about what you guys are up to, the constant evolution of, all these different services, how to use them, how to get more involved in their adoption at our organizations. Like it's all really awesome. You guys do a really awesome job of that for us. So we have one more guest, and I'm gonna break out my notepad. I know I can pronounce his name. Tim Harney is a partner solutions architect, and he's going to talk about actually building security into your cloud adoption. Come on up, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody. So just in response to your NDA question, sometimes even as an employee, with the pace of innovation, it's kind of staggering, and there are services that are launching that even we don't hear about until I see it on the AWS blog. So I definitely feel your pain, and I felt it when I was a customer as well. So that's really where I want to start when we're talking about cloud and cloud adoption, is that pace of innovation. When you think about 2017 for AWS, we launched over 1,400 new services and features, and you're just like, wow, how do we know about all these services? How do we know how to leverage them in our environments, whether it's from security or new services like Lambda that we're launching? How do you make use of all these? My role at AWS as a partner solution architect is working with folks like Presidio and like our technology partners to really help pull it all together for you and supplement and augment your team so that you don't have to get in-depth in every area. You can leverage some experts who have done this before, understand the path for a cloud migration, understand the way to secure your cloud as you're deploying a net new application or migrating an existing application into the cloud. So drawing a thread from where we heard Mark earlier all the way up through Pete talking a little more in depth about our services and Ben doing like a great overview of the guard duty service, one thing to consider is really defense in depth. So it starts with the human element, as Mark talked about, with any workload, and that's always the hardest one to solve. I don't have a cloud service today. I don't know if there's one launching under NDA, but I don't think we figured out how to secure that human yet. And one funny story, you mentioned DEF CON. I'd been a participant in ShmooCon down in DC for a number of years when I was doing pen testing and certified ethical hacking, and it was always interesting to see the statistics of, if any Mr. Robot fans in the house out here, you've seen the episode where the USB drive was dropped and they were able to infiltrate an environment. That was a real thing that we would do as pen testers, scatter a couple of USBs in a lobby, 50 of them. You'd be surprised 40 got plugged into machines. You'd be even more surprised that it wasn't the end users who brought it up to their desk and plugged it in. They went to your help desk and dropped it off with an IT admin who then plugged it into a machine to say, oh, I could figure out who's this. So that's still an ongoing challenge when you're thinking about securing the access to the cloud. Really drawing into Ben's presentation and understanding how guard duty could help you profile those users who are accessing your system is really important. On the machine learning piece, take a shot, right? The important factor there is always your training data. And as you have a bigger data set, more user interactions, and you're seeing more users enter your environment, you're going to be able to get tighter, more fine-grained control over who's accessing what. The other really interesting piece tying into Pete's is around MFA and what we could do with AWS SSO. So providing multi-factor authentication could eliminate some of those false positives as well. So where if somebody's actually logging in from that coffee house, not only do they need to have the user's username and password, but they have to be able to generate a one-time token to be able to access that resource. So if that really happens, that's a fire red alert that's waking people up out of their beds, versus kind of a daily alert because somebody decided to drive into their Wisconsin office today versus working from home. I think the larger story here, drawing through all of them, are just the building blocks that AWS provides. So with those 1,400 services in 2017 and all the existing 90-plus services spread across 14 regions and hundreds of POPs, that allow you to run Lambda at the edge and CloudFront, our CDN, to get your application closer to your customers and improve performance while also providing encryption at the edge, you're going to be able to build solutions that can meet most of your compliance needs, if not all. We have a large number of attestations and certifications from ISO 27001 to 9001, PCI, et cetera, that are all available on our platform. We're able to work and enable folks to undergo high trust, GXP, HIPAA and styled environments and secure their environment with our partners and with the solutions that we provide on the platform. The partner network consists of not only partners who are consulting partners such as Presidio, but ISV and technology partners. So when you said you were looking for a SIM, we have a lot in the AWS Marketplace. The Marketplace is a place where you could deploy vetted software into your environment. Whether it's Splunk, whether it's Elastic, you're able to correlate, aggregate, and provide those security services. From a SOC perspective, some of our technology partners like Alert Logic or consulting partners like SecureWorks could provide you 24/7 monitoring, security monitoring of your AWS services and aggregate all the data that you're getting from our services, whether that's CloudTrail, Config, Inspector, which scans your actual instances, or GuardDuty. So I think just to kind of wrap it up, being confident of the time here, there are a lot of services. Don't be intimidated. Don't be scared. We've been there before. Our partners have been there before. I encourage you to kind of engage with us afterwards, have a conversation. We could always direct you to the security technologies that could be deployed from the marketplace in your environment and work with you, whether it's through the Immersion Day that Pete mentioned or other type of events like that. There's a lot of knowledge that we could share with the team and a lot of best practices that we could help you work through as you're migrating and deploying your applications to the cloud. That's it. Oh, and I just want to bring up Kevin McGee from the AWS team because he handed me a couple AWS gift cards. I thought it was for coming up here tonight, but he told me we have to raffle them off.
Yeah, so it actually pays to stay. So if you stayed here, we have a good prize for you. We have two $50 Amazon gift cards. But wanted to thank everyone first for coming. I know it's a commitment after work. My name is Kevin McGee. I'm one of the senior managers for New England, and my team covers enterprise and named accounts in New England and upstate New York. And one of the things that we've been trying to build, everyone within AWS for New England, is more communities. This is the second event that we've done in Portland in the last 6 months, and we're building more and more of those. So one of the things that Tim mentioned was about events. So I just wanted to kind of go over. We are a true customer-obsessed company, and I've worked at very large software companies and small cloud companies that grew. And when Amazon says they're customer-obsessed, we mean it every single day. So one of the ways that we are customer-obsessed is we do a lot of free workshops, events for our customers to help educate them. So we have one coming. I'll go through a couple of them. There's 5. And they're all in Boston, unfortunately, but hey, it's a great time of year to come to Boston. We have a data lakes event. So if you're building data lakes, data warehouses, that's in Cambridge on the 9th of October. We have a Windows Immersion Day for AWS in Boston on the 11th of October. There's also QuickSight, which is business intelligence analytics. That's on the 24th. And then Ben will probably like this. We have an AWS Zombie Microservices Workshop. That's on the 30th in Boston. And then not in Boston, but the biggest event of the year is reInvent. That's in Las Vegas. It's on the 26th of November through the 30th. And it's truly a different customer experience. It's not your typical big event where you're going to get PowerPoint presentations to death. It's really built by our customers and for our customers with workshops. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm going to pick 2 names out of here, the people that we have. First one I have is Ian Mann. Is Ian here? Okay, I'll pick another one here. David Freeman. All right, we'll keep going. We might be here a little while. Kelly Barrett, I think she left. She was with Thrive. I know she had to leave early. We got, let's see who else we have here. Ray Lee, L-I-U? No? All right. I think we might have...
This might be easier to do. Who doesn't work for AWS, Presidio, or IDEXX?
There we go. We have Mohammed. All right. Mohammed, we got one winner right here. Hand that over. And then is Christina Prescott here? All right, who is the other, I guess the other non-name that you had? Oh, Joshua Forrest. There we go. There he is. Again, thanks everyone for coming. And there's a bunch of folks from AWS a bunch of solution architects in the back. I know a lot of you know Lex, Tim, Pete, Mark, myself, Brian. If you have any questions, we can try to get them answered. Thank you, everyone.
Kevin is he literally might be the wind beneath the wings of this entire thing. Like from an email perspective, like he's got it. Like he coordinated practically everything when it comes to just getting AWS to show up and talk to us tonight. So thank you again, Kevin. Yeah, so that's all we got, guys. Thank you so much for popping in. This is probably one of a few that we might be doing over the next 6, 12 months or so. This one was very security-centric because I'm greedy and I'm a security person, so I wanted to really ham it up there. But we are DevOps, we are Agile, we are all the fun things in software development here in Portland. We love AWS. We want to do this again, so just keep watching us on LinkedIn, and yeah, thank you.